Washington, President Donald Trump and his senior aides say they are hitting companies hard with wartime demands for ventilators, masks and other equipment to fight coronavirus, but the details have been less muscular than the rhetoric.
Trump has framed the Korean War-era Defense Production Act as a weapon he is wielding against companies such as General Motors and 3M, both of which he has complained are not doing enough to crank out medical equipment. But it's not clear whether the White House is fully embracing its powers under the act.
Despite a presidential memorandum last week pushing General Motors to ramp up the manufacture of ventilators, the administration has not yet formally ordered the automaker to create a single ventilator, USA Today found this week. Without an order, the administration isn't forcing the company to do anything, just threatening.
White House aides ratcheted up the tough talk in recent days as the president signed a series of additional memos, including one for 3M and another for General Electric and 5 other companies. But none of those orders provided any about exactly how the administration is using its powers to increase the supply of equipment.
GM, Trump hasn't formally ordered ventilators from GM despite wartime powers.
Testing, White House to test people who get close to Trump for coronavirus.
What we have, essentially, is a nation at war, said Peter Navarro, the top trade and manufacturing aide to the president who is coordinating the use of the Defense Production Act for the White House. The Defense Production Act is one of the most powerful weapons this administration can use to fight the invisible enemy of the virus.
Here are some unanswered questions about how Trump is using that weapon.
Trump and senior White House aides have said they are working with 10 to 11 companies to ramp up production of ventilators. But it's not entirely clear which companies they're referring to. The president has repeatedly named General Motors, the Detroit automaker that volunteered last month to convert some of its manufacturing capability to produce the breathing machines rather than cars.
Ford Motor and GE Healthcare announced this week that they would produce 50,000 ventilators in the next 100 days.
In a separate memo on Thursday, Trump named 5 other companies as being involved: Hillrom, Medtronic, ResMed, Royal Philips and Bayer Medical. It was not clear if those companies represented the extent of the effort or whether others are involved. White House officials did not respond to a request for information.
Op-ed, Trump administration moving swiftly to address ventilator shortages.
In a USA Today op-ed on Thursday, Navarro said that the administration is working with 10 different companies to deliver 5,000 ventilators in the next 30 days and more than 100,000 by the end of June. Trump has set similar goals publicly.
Trump signed a memorandum March 27 directing Secretary of Health and Human Services Alex Azar to use all available powers under the Defense Production Act to secure ventilators from General Motors. But the law gives the administration many different powers, from prohibiting hoarding of supplies to forcing companies to take priority contracts with the government. The administration hasn't spelled out which are being used.
Most lawmakers have zeroed in on the president's power to require a company to prioritize government orders or take control of the distribution of products, such as ventilators, needed in an emergency. Both of those powers would require the government to send a formal order to GM stipulating certain points, such as specific delivery dates and which government regulations were be used to justify the order.
In some cases, those orders can be made public, but they don't have to be.
Trump has repeatedly inferred that his administration is already forcing GM to make the units, saying he needed to compel General Motors to accept, perform, and prioritize federal contracts. But administration officials speaking on the condition of anonymity told USA Today this week that no formal orders had been placed, yet.
They also described the president's moves so far as an effort to nudge GM to voluntarily meet whatever demands the administration is making.
Robert Tompkins, co-chair of the government contracts practice at Holland & Knight, said it is common for the government and companies to negotiate before a formal order is issued. That's partly because the government has to make an assessment of what is possible. An unreasonable order could ultimately wind up in court.
The government and the company are generally trying to find out what's doable, said Tompkins, who was speaking generally about the process and declined to discuss any action taken against specific companies.
Trump came out swinging this week against 3M, a manufacturer of the highly sought-after N95 face masks. On Thursday, the president said he signed an order giving the Department of Homeland Security authority to buy masks from the company.
More, U.S. exported millions in masks and ventilators ahead of the coronavirus crisis.
Trump followed up with a tweet saying his administration hit 3M hard today after seeing what they were doing with their masks, adding that the company would have a big price to pay for what they were doing. Trump didn't explicitly explain his concern, but Navarro said the administration is worried that the masks were exported.
The administration could use the allocation provisions of the Defense Production Act to ensure that products necessary for national security are not exported, experts said. But in that case the government would have to send an order to 3M and it's not clear whether it has done so. Neither the White House nor the Department of Homeland Security responded to multiple questions about whether an order had been sent.
More, Trump blasts 3M as company says mask demand far exceeds ability to produce.
Unlike General Motors, 3M raised concerns publicly about the White House request, citing significant humanitarian implications of halting shipments to markets where they are a key supplier. They argued halting the export of masks on U.S. soil might cause other countries to retaliate by banning export of other products to America.
In its statement, the company also said the administration had made its requests this past weekend, before the president signed the Defense Production Act memorandum. A company spokeswoman declined to answer questions about whether the Trump administration had subsequently sent formal orders to the company.
Trump has often framed the Defense Production Act as an antagonistic tool, forcing companies to do something they're reluctant to do. Sometimes that is true, but just often, there's a tangible benefit for the companies subject to the orders.
For starters, companies handling a priority government contract under the Act can demand that their suppliers also prioritize the government's order. The Act also provides legal protection for companies who put aside one pending order for material to expedite those requested by Washington.
Navarro pointed to that dynamic this week.
If you look at the manufacturer itself, what you want to make sure is that the supply chain, which can go 7 tiers deep, has enough components in that supply chain so we can actually make what we need, he said at the White House on Wednesday.
Peter Schulman, a history professor at Case Western Reserve University in Ohio who has studied the Defense Production Act, said one of the motives of its authors was to allow the government to take a more systematic approach to the production of essential goods during wartime or a national emergency.
Though the Act is widely used today for more routine orders, it was drafted by lawmakers who had lived through the mobilization of World War II and who wanted to avoid the fits and starts of nationwide production that hamstrung efforts during World War I. That means giving the president power to make sure companies aren't competing against each other to manufacture the same highly needed products.
It's not about punishment, it's about mobilization, Schulman said.
It's making companies that normally we would want to see compete, in moments of actual crisis, be cooperating with each other, he said. That's a much more rational way of using the power of the Act that is not even remotely what they're doing right now.
Contributing, Brett Molina.